Right. Welcome to those of you watching the recording who were with us last week at the collab between Old School and Let's Reimagine, talking about aging and grief. We are going to get to your questions and answer Q&A session we didn't get to. First, there's a lot of exciting events coming up in the ageism world, with October 1st being the International Day of Older Persons and October 7th being Ageism Awareness Day. So first, I'll turn it over to Helen to let us know about your event that you have coming up.
I think Helen had a phone call, so let's go to Ashton first.
Okay, let's go to Ashton first. What events do you know about Ashton?
Hey. So the October 1st of longstanding has been the International Day of Older Persons, which is a UN-sponsored global initiative. And I guess what I'm just asking everybody is to, if you're on social media, look for stuff, look for the hashtag IDOP, or, there's various iterations, and spread the word. There's a brand new campaign this year. It's the first year of a 3-year campaign from Help Age International, which is a terrific organization. It really features older people all over the world, in the majority world in particular. And we know the movement to end ageism, that those people are underrepresented. So I love raising their voices. I think they do a great job. And they have just started a campaign called Older, Not Over. And I just recorded myself doing a video, even though I really hate doing that. And you can say as little as, I'm Ashton, I'm 71 and I'm older and I am not over. I think it's a pretty good campaign. Like the World Health Organization, they have to please everyone everywhere in the world. So it's hard to come up with something that everyone can get behind. And also the American Society on Aging, with a lot of other people. I think Helen's, I know Helen's, the initiative she's going to tell you about dovetails into it, is Ageism Awareness Day, which as of last year became a thing, which is very exciting. They have social media, they have animations, they have a toolkit. You can make your own, you can send people my TED talk, but, or whatever, but to do something to draw attention to this day. I mean, thinking back to when I started, I was begging people to put, a footnote on ageism or learn how to spell the damn word. And now that there are, national campaigns, global campaigns launching on this day is really exciting. So please get behind them. Thank you. Here's the link to the ASA one. And you can, if you don't want to, make up your own stuff, just, copy what I do, if that's not to make me famous, but because it's less work than coming up with it yourself, whatever, spread the word. Thank you. So October 1st is the International Day of Older People. The Help Age campaign has already sort of soft launched. They are looking for more videos. And Ageism Awareness Day is October 7th, but they have a whole bunch of things you can do in advance to get ready to do something more meaningful on the day. Thank you.
Perfect. And then Helen, doesn't look like Helen's back, so I'm going to copy and paste what she said. So Helen has an event coming up called Celebrate Longevity, Debunking Myths and Other Important Realities. It'll be on October 1st at 4:30 Eastern on Zoom. And there's a registration link in the chat. It's from her org, Top 60, and it's a mixed age discussion about the rewards and challenges of today's 100-year life. Focusing on, again, those 2 days Ashton just mentioned. And there's going to be Jeanette Liardi, who's a social gerontologist, Sky Bergman, a filmmaker, and then Tessa Van Out, maybe a teenage advocate. So she's got a good mixed age panel there. Okay, so those are some fun events, because if you attended our event, we're hopeful that you're curious about other free stuff. And now we will move to the Q&A. And so the first question we had was from person that said, how about some ideas for finding quality community as one ages, particularly for the LGBTQ plus community? And during the event, Andy from Let's Reimagine highlighted SAGE, which is an awesome org, as well as Open House SF. And I know, Ryan, you've done volunteer work with SAGE, and I've done volunteer work with Open House, so we can definitely vouch for both of them as awesome. But any other ideas for finding community, especially in the queer community as we age? Any ideas?
I can jump in. So my favorite hack to do with this is to find groups that you're already in that are diverse in age, and just say, you know, wow, isn't it so great that all these different ages are here? Because so often we're in these spaces that are mixed age, and we don't actually think about how we have such a diverse group of ages. I would also seek out something. I'm stealing this from Kyrie. Kyrie always recommends to just seek out something that you already do and join a group that's doing it, and hopefully there will be people there who are different ages than you. So those are my two ideas.
I have another one as well, which would be along piggyback to you, Brian, which would be, could be faith-based or not, whatever one's spirituality is or isn't. Sometimes, depending within certain faith communities, they can be safe spaces, not always. But that would be a place too for the LGBTQ folks to be able to find comfort, find other people. Yeah.
Choruses, singing.
Where?
Singing together is a really, not that I can sing, but they do tend to be mixed age because they're looking for the voice, you know, and there are also sort of choirs that are not super serious where you don't have to, you know, be ready for the Metropolitan Opera. And they are communities, and they are, and it's good for your body. It feels good to sing. I mean, I'm pretty sure Kyrie stole my line, which is think of something you like to do and find a mixed age group to do it with. This doesn't refer particularly, you know, to the LGBTQ community, I realize, but you know, look around.
Yeah, but I think especially to your point though, Ashton, too, it could be so a lot of times even, right, like so the queer community can be ageist, right? So if you are already engaged, notice and just call out. I know, Ryan, I feel like you talk about doing this a lot, like, hey, has anyone noticed that we're all the same age here? Like, and then think about, I really like the work, yeah, Open House here in SF does have a CCRC for the LGBTQ community, and then also has volunteer gigs. So like I helped with an event that was like at a gay bar here, and it was a really cool mix to see like literally from like the community, like buses arrive of folks who are living in long-term care come to this Halloween party, and it like made it mixed age. So like you can find those like safe queer spaces and then ask, hey, why are we siloed into age in this space? How is that actually compounding? How can we create more community there? But it's a challenge too, to make sure, you know, that it is a space that is safe. And especially, I know it's a really big problem in long-term care communities. Like, are they a place that's safe to be out? And there's a lot of people who have to re-enter the closet when having to enter long-term care. And that's, you know, not okay. For more about that too, there's, Ryan, maybe you could find a link to when you did Age Pride for, Ryan and I have a workshop we do called Age Pride, and it's looking at the intersection of ageism and the LGBTQ plus experience. So that's maybe a place to start too, is just on getting informed about it, and then, you know, sharing with your community, whether your community already is of mixed age and you want to make it more queer friendly, or you have a queer community that's age siloed that you want to break down those silos coming at it from one of those ages, because you've got that intersection of oppression there. All right, next question was, any discussion of loss from having to leave the place we lived in for a long time to move across the continent would be really helpful for me. And I know this person in the chat also shared that they'd recently, that over COVID, they moved from the West Coast back to the Midwest. So I don't know, do we have any words of advice for thinking about loss and in the context of aging, having to leave a place that you've lived for a long time at, you know, later in life?
I think there's a repeat there in terms of the word engagement, trying to find community. Sometimes it can be as simple as, frankly, the last few weeks, I've been meeting a lot of new people intentionally, having come off of a 35, 40-year career. And that's what I knew, identity, the whole thing. And so I'm finding new playmates. And some of that happened at the garden center, and some of it happened at a cafe. And it's a matter of, do you have a face that looks like you would engage? And I think that if someone is grieving loss, though, which I have also been doing, it's not always easy. But I those are my thoughts, is literally, I can be at a garden center picking out flowers. So it may be in the Midwest this time of year, particularly before, you know, it gets colder. Anybody else?
Go ahead, Ashton.
This, I just thought of this as you were talking, Meredith. I have a friend, he's actually the person I sold my loft in Tribeca to, gosh, 30 years ago. And he moved with his wife to what looked like just a beautiful old house about an hour and a half to the north of the city. And he, we had an email thing and I said, how's life in the country? And he said, well, I'm taking some time getting used to it. And I mentioned that my partner and I had looked at a couple of senior living places recently, although we didn't, you know, love that they were so economically and racially homogenous, to say the least. And he wrote back, strongly suggest that you do not do as we have done. Don't move to a place with no sidewalks, nothing to walk to, where you know no one, where everything needs to be repaired or replaced, where there are stairs between various parts of the house. The idea of a senior housing joint sounds like comparative heaven. That's just one anecdote, but there's so much in this country about independence, about aging independently. Everyone wants to age in place for reasons I completely, you know, understand. But I would try really hard to keep in mind that the most important component of a good old age is having a solid social network and move to someplace ideally where you know someone or have some kind of network you can tap into for starters.
Yeah. I feel like the thing that's coming up for me is just the ageism inherent in the idea that later in life we don't need to do the same strategies we needed to do earlier in life to make friends. And that's an ageist notion. You know, when you're in your early 20s and you move to a new city, you know you're going to have to put in effort to make friends. And there is this like ageist stereotype that you don't have them. And I know Bill Thomas talks about a friend funnel, and I really like that imagery that our entire life people are going to fall out the bottom of our funnel. And whether it's because they moved or we changed our relationship or someone died or whatnot, and that happens all life long. But you got to keep putting people in the top, and that's what we stop doing at a certain age, according to, again, like ageist notions in
right, but
our
it's not intrinsically harder because we are old.
Right. It's intrinsically harder because the culture doesn't accept it. Yeah, but it's like I'm thinking of things. Yeah, it's like I remember when I first moved from to San Francisco, I would go to the local bookstore to events because I was like, well, people at bookstores probably be my friend, and just like tried to meet people there. You know, like you just like
We
try
can
to
talk about the book.
Yeah, exactly.
Conversation starter.
About. But yeah, I think it's just that too, and you move to somewhere new, and having to just name that, like, okay, it's not considered normal to have to do this at this phase of life, but that's the problem, not actually having to do it. That's the ageism. Yeah, David.
I think it might be useful to remember that I don't need to have a friend per se in order to feel less lonely. And this kind of goes to Meredith's point in that if I can engage in a conversation with somebody just for a little bit, just make that connection, make eye connection, maybe even just say hi, even that alone begins to make me feel less lonely. And as Meredith was saying, also opens up an opportunity to have a little bit more of a conversation and to see what's there. So if I have lots of eye contact with somebody, say hi to a bunch of people during the day, maybe make a joke about you know, the way the barista is making coffee or whatever, that is a moment in the here and now that I can enjoy, where I can find pleasure, delight, maybe even opportunity in that. And if I can take the moment to notice that instead of always reaching toward the, oh, I don't have enough friends, then I might be able to begin to feel a little bit better about my situation, feel less lonely. And, you know, there might even be within those interactions opportunities to either grow more confident about being a little bit bigger in the world and talking to people, or there might even be somebody with a few of those individuals who could become my friends. So maybe not necessarily getting focused on the big, I need to have a new best friend thing, but I can have a whole bunch of really positive and interesting smaller interactions in a day that might not replace a friend or replace the social connections that I had, but will nevertheless make me feel more engaged in my community and more engaged with other people who are around me.
Thanks for bringing that up, David, because as I'm rereading her question, I realize it actually doesn't say anything about friends. It just like the loss of having to leave a place we live. We all like, we jumped down that assumption rabbit hole. So that's, yeah, it's a good thought. All right, we got a couple more. Here's a kind of fun one. I mean, fun in that I think we'll have some clever responses. Is there a good response when a stranger refers to me as old lady or grandma?
Mm. Oh, Ashton.
Not to do what I'm doing, which is rolling your eyes and acting pissed off. You know, I just always say that the most best all-purpose response to an ageist or biased comment is with a no snark in it. What do you mean by that?
Mhm.
And just, you know, look them straight in the eye. And, you know, and that's a good one for, you know, if they call you young lady too, which is frankly,
Yeah.
I mean, more common.
Yeah.
What do you mean by that? Then it is uncomfortable, but you know, it's better than trying to come up with a snappy answer or, you know, that's more targeted, or dealing with, frankly, the flush of anger that I, you know, feel at being condescended to.
I just put on my Gabby Hayes voice and say, well, you know, what, hi, Cracky, what do you want, you young whippersnapper? And it usually gets a laugh.
Yeah, I think that's a good, because I know we talk about in our Let's Dismantle Ageism workshop that when someone says like young lady, you know, or young man to someone who's older than, you know, who appears older than them, just responding in kind can be a funny way to do it too. So someone says young lady, you just say it back. And I'm wondering here, you have someone calls, you know, a woman who appears older than them grandma, like what would it be like? We're like, oh, well, thanks, grandson, or like granddaughter, like right back, just like put it back, like, okay, these are the roles we're in. Like, how does it feel to have the role sort of played back on you? Yeah.
I have another thought on that, which I tend to do. One thing though I did want to say from the last question was we have to be careful too. There's no question, you can tell I'm an extrovert. So when we talk about going to a cafe and getting to say hi to the barista who probably no one has truly asked them, how are you? Not how you doing today, but how are you? If there's that moment to do it. So for the other person too, it's not just necessarily for us, but to engage someone else who may not even be noticed. They're invisible. The other part, getting back to where we are right now, is that when someone says something like that, yeah, if they say grandmother or something, well, just, you know, give them a little dance, give them a little something, you know, show them that you're really being very biased, and the grandmothers can look like this too, and we can dance down to the floor and back up again. So sometimes you can be a little bit that way. Instead of getting angry, is to kind of show them, teach them that that's really not cool. I don't know, another thought.
I'm a grandma, but I'm not yours. So why are you calling me that? You know, or whatever. All right. All right. We got a couple more here. All right. This one is more of a comment than a question, but it says the best advice I got from an 83-year-old friend who's solo aging is make friends with folks younger than you. Expand your, as Amr said Maupin would say, logical family.
That's ageist, isn't it?
All ages.
In other words, you
Yeah.
always want to make
It's
friends
saying-
that people have interests, not
It's saying
necessarily.
reach for diversity.
Yeah.
That's not, you know, it's not saying don't be friends with people your own age.
Yeah, so we would
Then
say,
it
yeah, have
probably
age
should
diverse friends all lifelong, and this won't be a problem. Like that,
Yeah,
our logical family, which I love, Amr said Maupin, our logical family should always be mixed age, just like our biological family would be. And that's like a bit of a gap in folks who create chosen family or logical family, that they don't have it having as many mixed ages as a biological family would.
Hmm.
Okay, I'm like a little nervous to even say this one because it's going to be like a hop. You do the next one, Ryan. All right, and there were some thoughts on this. So it was, what is the significance that male participants in this session, so this session that was on aging and grief, is approximately 10%. Do males typically not let advanced age bother them? Do they not experience age-related losses? ? And then folks said in the chat that the previous week's speaker was interested in creating opportunities for men to talk about feelings, particularly around aging. In the UK, there's a trend of men creating neighborhood work sheds to work on projects and this might lead to connection and discussion. Someone else said they were curious about it, suspected that aging is easier on men than women, which I think we would all agree because there's no intersection there of ageism and sexism. Note how anti-aging products are mostly geared towards women. And then another participant said, in the patriarchal heteronormative society and culture, we're going to see generalizations of all cisgender men and cisgender women. Yes, from that perspective, I have experienced many more women than men busy with their bodies changing. And the one thing I'll add before turning this floor is like, we definitely, you do see in ageland spaces, there do tend to be more women, interestingly, not in this exact group, but I will open it up and see what folks think.
So that was my comment, actually, the last one that you said. The last one about patriarch and heteronormative. And that was me. So yeah, I'm always concerned. Men in my life. I'm always concerned and always reading. This morning I was reading about socialization of men and the whole being raised side by side, the socialization different than often women face to face. And again, I want to be careful that we're not, being binary here. So non-binary, being a little bit careful too, that we're not siloing by gender. But yeah, the men that are in my life, I talk with a lot about this very issue, and I'd love to hear certainly from others in the group and the men, particularly if there's any commentary. Yeah, I feel bad sometimes that a lot of men I know don't seem to have the kinds of connections, but some of them also tell me they don't feel they need it. Might be my thing. I'll have to put them out.
I got to point out that men don't live as long. So in older communities, you'll probably see a bias towards more women. But yeah, so that's one thing to note. The other thing is that group that you talked at last week was all about looking at loss, whereas this group is more about dealing with ageism specifically, and maybe that had something to do with the change in the mix, because that is men are dealing with loss in a different way. I don't.
Men and women experience aging differently because of sexism and patriarchy. And I think there are more women because women have more at stake in a sense, because we are penalized for appearing to age and for ceasing to be fertile, etc. And I also think women are more likely to join groups.
Mm.
Go ahead, David.
I'm really concerned about the loneliness of older men. I think that there are lots of reasons why lots of older men are lonely, largely having to do with how we are socialized to not ask for help. We have, many of us, bought hook, line, and sinker into this idea of the rugged individual, and any problem that I have, I should be able to solve on my own. And I think that that weighs for some men more heavily than on some women. I know that certainly in my practice as a personal trainer, just about everybody who shows up to my group classes, women. Just about everybody who wants to train with me as an individual, men. So it's very, very interesting. It's not that men are averse to being in that kind of intimate relationship with somebody else, because personal training is a very intimate relationship. But it's that I think they want it to be a little bit more contained, where they're seen by a smaller number of individuals than within a larger group. I think being in a larger group can be really, really quite scary when you don't know what to do. You don't know how to ask the questions that you might have to ask. You don't even really know how to formulate into words some of the thoughts and things that you've been experiencing, because if you've been the beneficiary of privilege for all of your life, it can be very difficult to even put into words some of the things that you are experiencing, maybe for some of us the first time as we grow older. So we don't have, some of us, that practice of putting into words what it feels like to be treated in certain ways. And yet at the same time, we feel that we have to be perfect in putting in those things into words really well so that people can understand. And of course, we don't want to cry, which is just silly and stupid and all of those things. But it's hard. It's hard to be seen as vulnerable when you've spent so much of your life not being seen as vulnerable. So quite wrongly, and I think, toxically, and I can talk about my own life here, where I used to always be wanting to fix everybody, and including myself. And if I wasn't fixing, then I wasn't doing, and I didn't have value. And that's a whole part of this capitalist thing that we buy into. So I think that the reasons are multitudinous and very, very complex. And I don't think that we can draw any conclusions about how men are or are not experiencing growing older and ageism and grief and loss by whether they show up to that particular kind of group, which takes a certain type of resilience and willingness to be seen, or at least be quiet. So that's my 2 cents.
David, Helen, you have your hand raised.
Yeah, and I know we're over time, so, and you're very responsive. I just wanted to point out that something I had heard, it had to do with the brain and different types of connections in the brain that may have something to do with the way in which men socialize and women socialize. But I can't give you the source now, and it's over time. So, but I think it's an interesting thought anyway.
Yeah, well, we can definitely pick it up. If anybody wants to pick it up again next week, we can. Yeah, we are. I will end on the lovely Imelda, who comes here often, emailed the folks from Let's Reimagine with just some feedback on the workshop that Ryan, I thought, was well put, and kind of falls in the category of you can't say every single thing every single time. But I think it was important. She called out an important distinction of something we missed in the workshop. So I'm just going to read that, and we'll end on that. Yeah, very uncharacteristically a couple minutes late. She said, I'm puzzled as to why the focus is on loss as we age in our later years. Yes, it is noted we lose baby teeth, etc. What I missed more than I can say is the immediate, explicit gerontological principle that every change involves loss and gain. Then to talk about that. Examples of loss were often physical in nature, such as hair color, moving slower, etc. That is, as Tracy Gendron reminds us, senescence. Senescence is biological, physical aging. The only one aspect of aging, which is both multi-directional and multidimensional. I missed that nuance when I tuned in today. And so I just want to say Imelda was absolutely right. And I think you all know us well enough to know, but I wanted to make it explicit that absolutely with every change, there is both loss and gain. And it's important to know that giving grief is a liminal step in between that loss and the potential growth that can come from it.
Thank you.
All right.
Thank you all for having me first time.
Thanks so much for being here.
Thanks for staying a couple minutes late, everyone, and for letting us record you. Thanks for anyone who's watching the recording. We'll be here next week. If there's anything that we didn't finish that you want to bring up, just throw it in the chat next week and we'll continue the discussion. Thank you so much, everyone.
Have a good week.
Bye.